Good morning and welcome to the House of AO.
I recently went back and watched my old videos and found an Andariel's Visage Charged Bolts build from Season 3. I decided to update it accordingly, and I was not disappointed. I've seen poison ticks upwards of 600 million, and normal crit damage reaching 40 million. It's a very survivable build with tons of AoE damage and decent single target damage as well. Let's bring our new creation to life, shall we?
Life! Life, do you hear me? Give my creation life!
Starting off, we'll put 2 points in Firebolt, as that goes in our first enchantment slot, then down to Devastation so we can put 3 into Elemental Dominance. Then we'll max out our charged bolts and take it out to Destructive for that extra 25% damage reduction. We'll use this in our second enchantment slot, for now. Then we'll move over and put 1 point in Elemental Attunement to reset our defensives, and 1 in to teleport out to Shimmering for a little more damage reduction. Max out Glass Cannon, as that is just sweet damage, and then 1 point in Ice Armor out to Mystical for more damage against frozen enemies and staggered bosses. Next we'll move over and take 3 in Precision Magic for even more lucky hit to proc our Poison Novas. Then Ice Blades out to Summoned and Lightning Spear out to Invoked. The stuns from these will generate even more charged bolts. Max out Conjuration Mastery, then 1 in Align the Elements, and max out Protection. We won't be spending enough mana for Mana Shield to be worth taking. We'll put 2 in Icy Veil to extend our barriers a little, then 1 in Inner Flames and max out Devouring Blaze. Moving down, we'll put 1 in Permafrost and max out Hoarfrost for even more damage to frozen enemies as well as staggered bosses. Then Unstable Currents out to Prime and 1 in Coursing Currents to get damage reduction from electrocution and more stuns from convulsions. For our key passive, I'm taking Veer's Mastery. I considered Shatter, but I don't plan on pit pushing with this build, and it tends to be very niche. For our gear, we'll use Ariel's Visage for everything it brings, mostly the Poison Novas. For the chest, we're using Tyrael's Might as it gives insane damage reduction and caps our resists at 85% each. On our gloves, we'll use the Piercing Static aspect, so our charged bolts hit as many enemies as possible. We also want Intelligence, attack speed, and damage over time. And for our tempers, we want % chance to freeze and critical strike damage. For the pants I'm wearing, Temerity. They work very well with Andariel's as it constantly gives us a barrier and even more damage reduction. Our boots have the aspect of the Orange Herald to keep our unstable currents available as often as possible, and we'll temper these with movement speed and % chance to stun. We want as much movement speed as possible, as well as getting GA2 armor to ensure we hit the cap. I have mana per second, but would much rather have intelligence. For the staff, we want a cracked-out Staff of Lamessin. Chance for charge bolts to cast twice, and ranks to charge bolts are great. Make sure you don't get too much resource cost reduction, so you'll be able to activate the Static Surge legendary node. Our first ring is Tal Rasha, as we'll be hitting all 3 elements, as well as Poison for a full 4 stacks. Starless Skies for the second ring, as all of its affixes are good, as is the damage boost, up to our amulet where we'll put the Storm Swell aspect for a ton of damage. Get as many good passives on your amulet as possible and temper it with Unstable Currents, cooldown reduction, and crit strike damage. With a good intelligence roll on the boots, I could reach close to 2,500 intelligence. I modified the Paragon boards to take advantage of the poison as much as possible, without sacrificing crit damage or damage reduction. On the first board, we'll start with Reinforced for the extra 15% damage reduction with a barrier. This glyph also gives us additional non-physical damage, which boosts the poison. Then up to Burning Instinct with Tactician to give us more damage reduction and damage to burning enemies. We'll also go up and get Safeguard and Kindling for even more of both. Over to Enchantment Master, pathing up to the Elementalist node, then down to Slot the Elementalist glyph, and then over to Grab Ruinous for as much non-physical damage as possible. Moving down to Frigid Fate, where we'll easily hit the 60% X cap. Get the Enchanter glyph and as much intelligence as possible to power it up. Then up to Oppressive for vulnerable damage and damage reduction. Moving to the right, where we'll get Searing Heat and a nice easy path. Grabbing Flame Feeder on our way to Ceaseless Conduit and Destruction. We aren't focusing on critical strike damage, so we'll get just enough dexterity to activate it. And since we have a few extra points, we'll grab Galvanic Catalyst for more lightning damage. We'll finish off with the Static Surge board and our Exploit glyph for damage to vulnerable. These boards max out damage reduction, damage to elites, vulnerable damage, and non-physical damage to power our poison. Between gear and boards, we have an insane amount of damage reduction and elemental resists. I'm only showcasing a T7 Horde, as it's the most fun and profitable. I did finish a 122 pit, but haven't pushed any further as I don't really enjoy pits all that much. As you can imagine, mobbing was a breeze, and the boss at the end took a little work. But we were never in danger of dying. It easily kills all tormented bosses as well as Lilith, and is just enjoyable to play. I've linked my old Charged Bolts video in the description below for nostalgia. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. If you've enjoyed the video or the content, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe to the channel. And as always, fare thee well and happy gaming.